All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Sonali Sagar, and I'm the Product Marketing Manager at OpenText, and I support the EnCase Forensic and Tableau line of products, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Firstly, I would like to thank you all for taking the time to join us for this webinar, Customize Your EnCase Investigations with EnScript Plugins. A quick run-through of the agenda. So in today's webinar, we will be doing a quick review of EnScripts and their benefits for those who are new to them, an introduction to EnScript plugins and some examples for those, as well as look at some other notable plugins. Towards the end, we'll go over some frequently asked questions about EnScript plugins as well. Towards the end, we will give a quick preview of EnFuse, which is our largest digital forensic and security conference. Next slide, please. We will address your questions at the Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So just some of the housekeeping items before we jump into the presentation for today. So throughout the webinar, please remember to submit your questions to the chat window. At the bottom of your screen are a few helpful widgets that I'd like to point out as well so that you can use them as needed. We will also be recording this webinar and we will be posting it on our website and also be emailing the link to all the attendees so that in case you run into any issues and missed a part of the webinar, you can always go back and watch it at your own convenience. We would also like to say that you please take the time to submit the survey at the conclusion of the webinar. This allows us to gather product and presenter feedback, which helps us improve our future webinars. Also, completing the survey will qualify you to win a free EnCase training course. Lastly, if you have any questions following our webinar, please feel free to contact us at the link here or at the email address provided. All right, with no further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by two extremely knowledgeable forensic experts, Harp Thukral and Simon Key. Harp Thukral is the product manager for EnCase at OpenText and is based out of the Washington, D.C. metro area and has over 15 years experience in software development in the government, education, financial, and enterprise industries. Harp has been working in the digital forensics space since 2017 and is focused on making sure that EnCase delivers what the forensic community needs. I would also like to introduce Simon Key, who is our course curriculum developer for EnCase at OpenText and has expertise in EnScript. Prior to joining OpenText, Simon served as a police officer for 17.5 years, working for Northamptonshire Police, a small county police force located in central England. Simon is a regular presenter at the EnFuse conference and spends a substantial amount of time writing programs in EnScript and other languages, many of which have been published to EnCase App Central. A significant portion of Simon's development work has led to increased functionality in EnCase, particularly in the field of Macintosh examinations. With that said, let's begin our presentation for today. Over to you, Harp.
Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here to talk to you about what's going on in EnCase. We introduced version 8 of EnCase about 2 years ago. And the best way to describe it is, we have version 6 and version 7, and they got together and they had a child. Because we really took the best of those two versions and included it in version 8. And to help make that transition a bit more easier, we actually have created a free startup training for version 8. It is a 13-part, 2-hour training which will help you ramp up on EnCase version 8 and show you how things have changed, such as navigating in the software, evidence processing, hash analysis, bookmarking, condition filters, reviewing artifacts such as email, internet, compound files, or use a case analyzer and creating reports. The best part is it is available to you as a customer for free. And to request it, at the end of the webinar, just email us and we'll send you that link. Okay, just to be clear, this is not the free training which is being raffled away. This is available to everyone for free. As some of you know, we do biannual releases, which are packed with solutions to the problems you're facing, such as bug fixes and new features. The latest version of EnCase, which is coming out first week of June, version 809, is no exception. This version includes themes such as improvement in processing speeds, logging and auditing capabilities, encryption updates, artifact updates such as Firefox PST, Windows and Mac OS X related artifacts, iOS 12 support for mobile devices, automation, and 50-plus bug updates. We will be having another webinar to talk at length about this upcoming release, so please keep an eye out for that release and the webinar. Just to lay down the groundwork for Simon, I want to talk a little bit about EnScripts. EnScripts are designed to extend the functionality and efficiency of EnCase. It could do one or both. So if something would take time to do in EnCase, or if the investigator might not readily know how to find that information easily, an EnScript could bubble up that information. Even extend the capabilities by parsing additional artifacts we might not support in EnCase directly today. Another use case could be automating things which need to be done again and again as part of your investigation. The great thing about these EnScripts is that they are typically developed over years and years by experts, people such as Simon and others who are part of the community. I want to draw your attention towards App Central. App Central is a great place to start the search. It is really your one-stop shop for EnScripts, EnPacks, and templates. And there are hundreds of them included, and almost all of them are free. We launched App Central back in 2013, and I've had more than 100,000 downloads. And all of them are tested and verified to ensure that there's nothing malicious going on in them. EnCase App Central has been available all this time from http://www.guidancesoftware.com/app, or now directly from EnCase Forensic. If you go into your EnScript menu, you will see a link for App Central. This is starting with version 809, which is coming out in June. Like always, I really appreciate the time you've given me to talk about EnCase, and my role here is really to listen to what you like and dislike about EnCase, what problems you've seen solved, and where do you want EnCase to go next. Please feel free to reach out to me and give me a feedback, or sign up as a beta tester. Whichever route you take, I look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Simon.
Okay, good morning, afternoon, or evening, folks, wherever you may be. We have quite a lot of content to cover, so without further ado, let's make a start and look at what's on the agenda. EnScript plugins are tightly bound to the EnScript programming language in general, so we'll first take some time to review exactly what EnScript is and how it can benefit you as examiners. Having done that, we'll review what makes plugins different, and then take a look at some examples to illustrate just how useful they can be. I'll then go on to list some of the other plugins that you might want to take a look at before answering some common questions. Okay, away we go then. Anyone actively involved in the arenas of digital forensics, computer security and e-discovery knows just how busy we as examiners can be and how we have to deal with ever differing types of data. On top of that, each of us has very specific requirements when it comes to the way in which we want or need to work. I spend a lot of time writing code to help our customers, and it never ceases to amaze me how many different ways people need to extract data. There may be a requirement to extract files in a flat list, maintain their original folder structure, or group files according to file extension type or category. Accordingly, it's simply not possible for a forensic tool like EnCase to do everything one might wish for. Also, time can be of paramount importance. Any of you examiners out there might come across important data tomorrow that can't be decoded by EnCase or any other forensic tool on the market. This is where EnScript comes in. The EnScript programming language offers fantastic value and flexibility by enabling you folks out there to handle custom data types, create your own automated workflows, and expand the EnCase GUI. This last feature is where the plugins that we're going to look at today really come into their own. And the great thing about all of this is that anyone with an EnCase license can develop and use EnScript applications and plugins at no extra cost. Now, for those of you who might be interested in developing applications for EnCase, the EnScript programming language is similar to Java and C++. That said, it's not a totally separate entity, more a way of exposing internal EnCase C++ code in a manner that is much easier to work with. This means that calling internal EnCase functionality from EnScript, running a keyword search for example, is just as fast as if you were doing it in EnCase itself. Moreover, it allows developers to retain ownership, update code in a timely manner, preserve confidentiality, and ensure code integrity. To give you an example of this, my old police force recently had to provide some very specific information about some most unpleasant pictures they'd found using EnCase. This required some custom code to be written. There's no way that the copy of the disk containing those pictures could have been made available externally, but thankfully I was able to go into police headquarters and write some EnScript code to extract the information that was required, in this case by a Crown Court. Now, whilst we're on the subject of data security, being able to certify or verify the integrity of code and the data it produces is no doubt very important to some of you, so being able to write that code yourself may prove very useful indeed. I myself have had to do it several times in the past to verify the operation of EnCase and other forensic tools. Before we move on, now is a good time to broach the subject of whether everything that EnScript does should be included in EnCase itself as core code. In some cases this may certainly be beneficial, but it's important to remember that migrating functionality into EnCase may prevent the original developer, me for example, making timely updates. Applications that stay as EnScripts are not bound by EnCase product release schedules or quality assurance testing, so they can be updated whenever the need arises, which makes for great flexibility and responsiveness. So what else does EnScript offer? Well, EnCase can be executed from the command line and told to run a script at the same time, passing it certain parameters. This is great for automation. Also, if EnScript doesn't support certain functionality natively, it can be extended by launching external programs, Python scripts for example. It can also communicate with applications and services using something called COM, which enables it to control applications like Microsoft Office or work with data from many different sources, SQL Server for example. EnScript can also access and implement web-based applications. However, on top of all of this, perhaps EnScript's coolest feature is the ability to extend its capabilities by integration with .NET. This greatly enhances its functionality and allows data to be processed internally without having to extract evidence file data first. This saves time and disk space. On top of that, the output of a hybrid EnScript.NET application can be bookmarked directly into EnCase without having to use one or more intermediary files on disk. A particularly cool thing about using EnScript with .NET is that scripts can be packaged as NPAC files so as to ease distribution of multiple source code files, including .NET DLLs. This also avoids EnScript and .NET library compatibility issues and allows the code to be encrypted. It also allows the execution, functionality and longevity of an NPAC application to be controlled by a license, which in turn can be restricted to one or more dongle IDs. So what types of EnScripts are there? Well, what I refer to as standalone scripts are the most common type. EnCase runs these scripts in the background thread, making sure they don't interfere with anything running in the foreground. Another type of EnScript is the evidence processor module. It extends automated processing by creating records in each evidence file's device cache. It's worth noting that once processed, an evidence file and its device cache can be added into any number of cases. It does not have to be examined in the cases where it was processed, which enables processing to be done separately. The third type of EnScript is an EnScript filter, which controls the entries, artifacts or result set items shown by the EnCase GUI. These are similar to conditions, but they have more power and flexibility. For example, they can have custom dialog boxes. The last type of EnScript is the plugin, which is what we're here to look at in more depth. So, in summary, EnScripts allow the examiner to greatly expand the capabilities of EnCase and implement custom, automated workflows, all at no extra cost and in a timely fashion. Their integration with .NET and external applications and services makes for virtually unlimited potential. Also, the fact that they can be shared benefits everyone. Ultimately, if you're not making best use of EnScript, you're not making best use of EnCase. Okay, so having reviewed exactly what EnScript is and what it can offer, let's move on and take a look at plugins specifically. Plugins are particularly useful because they can interface with and expand the EnCase GUI. For example, they can add options to the Tools and Toolbar menu. They can also add right-click context menu options, which facilitate working directly with the items currently in view. For example, entries, artifacts, bookmarks, permissions, or pretty much anything else that can appear as a list in the EnCase GUI. Each plugin can also have its own application tab, like the Case Analyzer, as well as add menu options to what is sometimes referred to as the hamburger menu, which appears in the top right-hand corner of most tabbed window controls in EnCase. Finally, plugins can add options to the EnScript editor, thereby allowing code to be manipulated. We make very good use of this on our EnScript training course. Now, once loaded, plugins usually stay in memory until EnCase exits. In most cases, however, it's usual to install plugins in a way that allows EnCase to start and stop them automatically. This is made possible by placing them in one of two folders, as we shall see shortly. From an operational perspective, unlike standalone EnScripts which run in the background thread, plugins run in the foreground thread, which allows them to do a few extra things. That said, it's sometimes useful to combine the two by having a plugin script that runs the standalone script. Considering the fact that plugin menu options can be assigned keyboard shortcuts, this can prove to be a huge time saver. Before we take a look at some examples, it's important to remember one thing. Plugins are not a panacea. Once invoked, they will block the foreground thread and may cause EnCase to hang or crash if they're not written properly. Also, dialog boxes presented by plugins are what we refer to as modal, in that it's not possible to interact with the main EnCase dialog whilst they're active. Ultimately, whilst offering greater power in some cases, plugins are not suitable for every purpose. Some scripts, those that extract large files in preparation for external processing, for example, should be coded as standalone scripts. Either that or lengthy processing should be launched in the background thread under the control of a dialog box that displays the progress made thus far, together with an option to cancel. Several of our EnCase training plugins do just that. Okay, so having provided an overview of what plugins have to offer, let's look at some examples, starting with the EnScript Launcher. This plugin allows the examiner to launch standalone EnScripts from multiple folders quickly. It uses a SQLite database file in memory and can be invoked using an option on the EnScript menu or the Ctrl-Shift-R keyboard shortcut. This example is a bit of an odd one out because although it was originally written as an EnScript plugin, it's now part of EnCase. Let's take a look to see how it works. Using the menu optional keyboard shortcut to execute the plugin for the first time will result in EnCase prompting the examiner to specify the EnScript folders to be indexed. In this example, the path to a single folder has been supplied and the plugin has been told to index npack files only. Clicking OK causes the plugin to scan the designated paths and index all of the scripts it finds, storing the results in the memory resident SQLite database. Clicking OK again causes the plugin to display the list of scripts which can then be searched, in this case by a single search term, the word Exif. This makes it easy to locate the next plugin to be demonstrated, the Exif Viewer plugin. Multiple search terms could have been used instead, in which case the EnScript Launcher would have joined them using AND logic. Running a script displayed in the list is accomplished simply by double-clicking on it. Alternatively, the script can be highlighted and the OK button clicked. The mouse or keyboard can be used for this purpose. The dialog also provides options to change and rescan the list of script paths. Most of the time rescanning isn't necessary because it's done automatically when EnCase starts. OK, let's move on and take a look at the Exif Viewer plugin. Like most of the plugins created by the EnCase training team, the Exif Viewer plugin is self-installing. This will be covered in more depth shortly. As the name implies, the plugin facilitates viewing and bookmarking Exif metadata, including GPS data. If an internet connection is available, it also allows GPS coordinates to be viewed using Google Maps. It's important to point out that there are other scripts that are better suited to mass processing Exif images. The Exif GPS information reader EnScript, for instance. That particular script has all sorts of other capabilities, including filtering. It can even identify Exif pictures taken within a given radius of a set of GPS coordinates. That said, the plugin works better as an ad hoc viewer, so the two scripts complement each other quite nicely. OK, so let's see what happens when this plugin is executed for the first time. The dialog we see here allows the plugin to be installed for every user, the current user, or just the current EnCase session. Most of the time the examiner will probably want to stick to the default setting and click OK. Unlike standalone scripts, which typically display some form of options dialog, installing the Exif Viewer plugin doesn't appear to do much. This is typical for plugins of this type. This is because the plugin doesn't run like a regular script. It's loaded into memory, whereupon it installs a new Exif Viewer plugin right-click context menu, which we can see highlighted in this screenshot. This particular plugin has options to work with the currently highlighted item or selected items. Note that each menu item has a keyboard shortcut, which is a real time saver. In this example, the highlighted picture shows the Hollywood Bowl. Let's see what the View Exif Data and View Exif GPS link in Google Maps options can do for us. The View Exif GPS link in Google Maps option has launched Google Chrome, enabling us to view the exact location of the picture. This is a good example of EnScript being able to interface with external applications. The dialog box on the right-hand side of this screenshot was launched by the View Exif Data option. It allows us to view the picture's Exif metadata tags and bookmark the ones we're interested in. The great thing about all of this is that the viewer functionality provided by the plugin is very quick to launch. There's no messing about configuring external viewers, and the output can be bookmarked straight into EnCase using the highlighted toolbar buttons. Also, this functionality remains in the hands of the developer, so it can be customized at any time. Let's have a look at another plugin that decodes data, the Plist Viewer plugin. The Plist Viewer plugin enables the examiner to view and bookmark the property list files that will contain significant data encountered during any macOS or iOS examination. The plugin supports both XML and binary plist files, including plists that are nested or embedded in values of other plists. I've seen up to 3 levels of these, a good example of which are the property list files used to store user account data. The Plist Viewer plugin is also capable of interpreting the NS-keyed archiver property list schema used to serialize data. iChat message files are an example of this type of plist. Just like the Exif Viewer plugin, once installed, the Plist Viewer plugin is invoked using a context menu option, which we can see here. In this case, it's being used to view a plist file containing user settings for the macOS Finder program, which is the equivalent to Windows Explorer. Let's have a look at the output. The values we see here are the names of recently used folders. The plugin allows the examiner to bookmark notable values, view binary values as a stream, or extract values to a logical evidence file for further processing. This last option is typically used for binary values that need to be decoded or viewed as such. For example, the picture of a user as stored in a user account plist file of the type I mentioned a few seconds ago. Okay, so having looked at a couple of plugins that can interpret and view data, let's look at one that demonstrates the .NET integration that I mentioned earlier, the Hash Calculator plugin. As many of you will know, hash values, sometimes called digital fingerprints, are very common. In some cases, they're stored in binary structures that we need to reverse engineer. In others, peer-to-peer file sharing for instance, they may identify files that have been downloaded but since deleted. EnCase supports SHA-1 and MD5 hash calculation for complete files. Its external viewer feature can also be used to launch third-party applications to calculate hash values of other types. However, neither of these functions supports hashing segments of data from larger files. That's where the Hash Calculator plugin comes in. It's particularly useful when reverse engineering data structures protected by one or more checksums. Not only that, but it supports sending SHA-256 values to VirusTotal, which can help identify malicious files or versions of files that may have been vulnerable to attack. By using an embedded .NET DLL, the Hash Calculator plugin supports certain hash algorithms that EnScript does not. For example, the MD4 hash values used by the eMule peer-to-peer file sharing software and the CRC32 values used by WinZip. The .NET DLL receives the data as an internal stream, thereby saving time and disk space. Let's have a quick look at how the VirusTotal function works. Here we can see a highlighted file called pstools.zip. Many of you will no doubt recognize this file as a set of utilities created by sysinternals, which is now part of Microsoft. Despite the fact that these tools were designed to assist system administrators, some of them, most notably psexec, are used for hacking. Let's see what happens when we use the Hash Calculator plugin to send the zip file SHA-256 hash to VirusTotal. As we can see, VirusTotal has identified the SHA-256 hash as belonging to pstools.zip, which has been identified as malicious by 2 online antivirus services. EnScript plugins make this type of ad hoc analysis almost instant. Okay, let's turn our attention to a couple of plugins that augment EnCase's GUI functionality. First, the Attribute Helper plugin. The Attribute Helper is designed to make it easier to view, compare and bookmark values shown in the View pane, which allows EnCase to show any number of attributes for disks, volumes, files, folders or artifacts. To demonstrate the usefulness of this plugin, we'll take a look at the com.apple.metadata KMD item wherefroms attribute, which is used by macOS to track the origin of a file, for example, a file downloaded from a web address or a file sent as an email attachment. What if we wanted to bookmark this value from any file in a user's documents folder? Well, showing only those files that have this attribute can be accomplished using a condition, but bookmarking the value of the attribute from multiple files is a little trickier. The Attribute Helper plugin presents all of the attributes in a single tree, which makes it much easier to view, sort, compare and bookmark them. This is a great example of a custom workflow. Let's have a closer look. In this screenshot, the content of the user Bob's Documents folder has been blue checked. The highlighted file is a picture and we can see that it has the KMD item wherefroms attribute in the Attributes tab of the View pane, which is visible at the bottom. However, to bookmark this attribute, we'd have to use the Attribute tab's Browse Data button to bring the content of the Attribute tab into the top half of the EnCase GUI. Doing this on an individual basis is not too much of a problem, but for multiple files it would involve a lot of work. Instead, we can use the View Bookmark Attributes from Selected Entries option provided by the Attribute Helper plugin. Let's take a look and see at how that works. The dialog presented by the Attribute Helper plugin shows all of the selected files and their attributes in a single tree. By sorting the list objects first according to type and then by name, it's easy to find and select the KMD item where from's attributes. The Filter Attributes button makes this task even easier. What's more, the blue checks can be followed to locate each file with this attribute so that its other attributes can be bookmarked. Alternatively, there's a right-click option that does exactly the same thing. So, having found and selected the notable attributes, it's simply a case of clicking the toolbar button to bookmark them. This screenshot shows the bookmarks that have been created for the files that have the selected KMD item where from's attributes. Adding these to the case report is a simple process. Okay, so let's take a look at another plugin that enhances EnCase's GUI functionality, the Utilities plugin. This is a general purpose plugin offering several different options. Firstly, it provides quick access to the current case's export folder and the last used output folder of a script that supports this function, including many of our training scripts. Secondly, the plugin allows the user to enter multiple line delimited search terms from which it will construct an index query having and or logic. This can save a lot of time, particularly as each term is wrapped in double quotes automatically. The resultant query is displayed and copied to the clipboard ready to paste into EnCase's index query box. Thirdly, the plugin makes it easier to select the child objects of folders that have been themselves selected, typically after having been found and tagged using an index search. Finally, the plugin allows the examiner to quickly select the emails containing selected attachments. Again, this is something that's not too difficult to do in isolation, but doing it multiple times is much harder. This is one particular plugin that creates options on the Tools menu and right-click Context menu. As we see here, the option to open the export and last use folders and that to create a combined index query are accessible via the Tools menu. The child node and email selection options, on the other hand, are available on the right-click Context menu. Okay, we have time for one last plugin example, the EnScript Editor Utilities plugin, which I use quite a bit when writing and teaching EnScript. The EnScript Editor Utilities plugin adds a number of functions that are useful for EnScript developers, including the ability to search for the symbols that they need to use. The EnScript editor does not have the power of a full-blown integrated development environment like Visual Studio or Eclipse, but this can help. One function we use all the time during our EnScript programming course wraps the currently highlighted code in the new block, which saves a lot of time and prevents compilation errors. Okay, we've exhausted the time that we have available to demonstrate individual plugins. What follows is a list of other plugins you might wish to try. The generic XML viewer and JSON viewer plugins are fairly self-explanatory. The bookmark filter plugin allows the examiner to select bookmarks based on one or more criteria, typically the contents of the comment field. This is particularly useful when examining the bookmarks created by another script. The View SQLite with WAL plugin allows SQLite database files to be viewed in conjunction with any write-ahead log file, and the Windows Quick View plugin makes it easy to extract and open files using the default Windows viewer, something that's very useful from the EnCase Results tab. The Registry Viewer plugin makes it easy to view and bookmark data from registry high files using a keyboard shortcut and without mounting those files first. The Volatility plugin performs automated multi-threaded analysis of RAM dumps using the Volatility memory framework. And finally, the BitTorrent BENCODE Viewer plugin allows the examiner to view and bookmark torrent files and other BENCODed data maintained by uTorrent and other BitTorrent clients. Okay, I'll now take a few minutes to answer some questions that are frequently asked about EnScript and EnScript plugins. Firstly, all of the plugins created for use during EnCase training, including those shown during this presentation, will be made available for download via a link at the end. EnCase App Central is also worth visiting on a regular basis. As we can see from this screenshot, it's quite easy to filter the contents of App Central to show the plugins that are available to download. As and when I make new plugins available, I post details to Twitter. My Twitter handle will be given at the end of the presentation. So, where should plugins be installed to run automatically when EnCase starts? Well, as already mentioned, all of the EnCase training plugins are self-installing. That said, it might help to know that they can be manually copied into the EnScript main folder in the EnCase program folder or the EnCase EnScript main folder in the user's documents folder. It's worth noting that the main folder is not created by default when EnCase is installed. For those folks who are interested in how plugins work, an EnScript plugin installs a memory resident instance of something called application class. I will tell you where you can find some example plugin code shortly. When it comes to obtaining help for each plugin, that will depend on the developer in question. All of the EnCase training plugins have a help option on their program tab, which can be displayed using the appropriate option on the view menu as shown in the following screenshots. In this case, the tab for the JSON Viewer plugin is being invoked. Now it's simply a case of clicking the help option to view the help text. Note that there are also options to check for an updated version of the plugin and to remove the current version. Please note that installing a new version of a plugin does not automatically uninstall an old version. This has to be done manually by removing it from the appropriate main folder, as mentioned a second ago. I mentioned earlier that plugins stay in memory, so is it possible to stop a plugin when EnCase is running? Well, yes. You can right-click on a tab when it's not in focus and take the Stop Script option, as shown in the following screen. Note that stopping a plugin this way does not remove it. The plugin would start again the next time EnCase starts. If you're interested in writing EnScript in general, and perhaps plugins in particular, my EnScript Samples GitHub repository provides a summary of the technical information available, together with many code samples, including an example plugin. Please bear in mind that EnScript is a niche language, so it doesn't have the support of mainstream programming languages such as C# or Java. Accordingly, you will have to ask for help at some point, but that's what we're here for. You can always reach out to me using the contact information contained in this presentation. Email is usually the best option. So, do you need a license to develop EnScripts? Well, EnScript code, like any other code, is text, so you don't need a license to write it. You do, however, need a license to compile and run it. However, subject to approval and certain conditions, an EnCase App Central developer's license may be available free of charge. For more details, you can visit the link shown here. One of the questions I'm often asked is why there are so many encrypted NPAC files rather than plain text EnScript files. Is it to encrypt the code? Well, maybe, but it depends on the developer. Most EnCase training EnScripts consist of multiple source code files. They're packaged together primarily to aid distribution and maintain library compatibility. I appreciate that this can be a little frustrating when trying to learn EnScript, hence the reason for the EnScript Samples GitHub. I'll come back to this when answering the next question. I sometimes get asked if all of the source code is available for our training EnScripts. Well, as things stand at the moment, we have in excess of 200 of these. They took a lot of time, money and effort to develop and form part of our training materials, so I'm afraid the answer is no. That said, if you're interested in a particular aspect of a script's functionality, please reach out and I'll do my best to make one or more code samples available via the EnScript Samples GitHub. So what about EnScript training? Well, it's probably obvious from what I've already said, but just to be clear, EnCase training is available both on and off-site. You can visit the web address shown here for more details. Okay folks, that's me done. Thanks very much for your time. You can use the QR code shown here to download a zip file containing this presentation, together with the current collection of EnCase training plugins. I hope you find them useful.
Thank you, Simon, for the great presentation. I hope it was informative and interesting for all of the audience. Before jumping into the Q&A section, I would like to bring to your notice that EnFuse, our largest digital forensic and security conference, is going to be held from November 11th to the 14th at the Venetian Resort in Las Vegas. I'd like to highlight that there will be about 100 plus breakout sessions, 90 plus speakers, and 100 plus OpenText experts, 50 plus industry vendors and suppliers. There will be hands-on labs as well as opportunity to get EnCase certification. So please be sure to register by June 30th to take advantage of the early bird rate. We're really excited about this conference and we look forward to seeing you there. With that, please submit your questions in the chat box and we'll be happy to answer as we go on. One question I have is, would it be beneficial for me to learn another programming language before learning EnScript? Simon?
Hi, thanks, Sonali. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, it's quite a common question, and knowing another language would certainly help. But to be honest, you're probably wasting a little bit of time if you intend to be using EnScript as your primary language. You're better off just going ahead and learning it straight off. It's easier than some of the other languages. When I started, I was quite interested in, I'm going to learn C++ because that's what EnCase is written in. But the problem is that EnScript is not C++. It's a lot easier. So you're better off just starting to learn EnScript. And actually, EnScript is a good stepping stone to then go on and learn something like C++ or C#. That's pretty much really the way around that I ended up working with C# because of the integration with .NET. It was really cool to be able to deal with stuff that I couldn't do natively in EnScript, and to be able to write a .NET DLL and then package that in, and that's how a lot of our developers internally work now with some of our products. They work straight in C#. So I hope that helps.
Great, thank you, Simon. Another question I have is, do these plugins have to be reinstalled with each EnCase update, or is there a .ini file that can be copied over from the older version of EnCase?
So it depends effectively where you chose to install the plugin. If you chose to install it in your in the subfolder of your own documents folder, then that will be picked up by a new version of EnCase. But if you took the option to install it in the EnCase program folder, then no, you'd have to copy them over. To be honest, that's what I do when I install a new version. I normally put them in the main EnCase program folder, EnScript main subfolder, and I just go in there and then copy them and then paste them over. It's not too difficult to do. Now, if they remember, they use little what we call storage.ini files, and they're in a subfolder of the Windows program data folder. If you want to preserve those settings, yeah, I'm afraid you're going to have to find those little ini files and then copy them over yourself. It's one of the things that I've got on my to-do list to see if we can make that a little bit easier for you, but I just haven't got around to doing it. So much to do, so little time.
Great, thank you, Simon. Another one, do you have any tips for learning EnScript?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best ways, my son is just stepping out onto the programming ladder, and one of the best ways is if you can get hold of some code that has already been written to accomplish a particular task. Then what you can do is actually set about writing your own code without if you can, looking at at what you've got already, and then if you get stuck, it gives you a good way to move forward. You can go and have a little sneak peek at the the existing code, and then that will hopefully put you back on track. Quite often with people that come on the EnScript course, particularly those that develop in other languages, we've got folks that come on that they're experts in assembler, C, C++, C#, and all sorts of stuff. So I don't really need to tell them how to program. They just really need a steer as to what path they take. EnCase, like a lot of EnScript, sorry, like a lot of programming languages, is joining all of the different objects together to get your result. So if you've got some code that already does what you need, then that's a great way. And the other thing that just from a learning perspective, I mean, if you can speak a language, then you can program. But obviously, when you learnt your mother tongue, you didn't speak it straight away. It took time, and you pick up bits as you go. And we tend to be proud people, and we don't like that. We want to know everything immediately. But it is one of those things. And there's a couple of books that I always recommend you go read if you want to understand how your brain works. And one is called the Chimp Paradox. That's a really, really cool book when you want to understand, why you do and don't learn particularly well. And there's another one called Atomic Habits. Those two books are absolutely fantastic. Not just for learning EnScript, but learning anything really. Just helps you to understand exactly how your brain works.
Great. Thank you, Simon, for that really helpful feedback. One last question I have here is that I've tried EnScript, but it seems a little slow.
Yeah, I mean, I found that myself initially, and I used to push to try and get EnScript into core code until I had I used to have a few chats with the guy that actually created EnScript, a chap called Sean McCright. And actually, the problem wasn't the EnScript, the problem was the programmer. In that, I'm not a trained programmer, so I'm, I'm self-taught. So one of the things actually that really didn't hit home to me until I came across having to do one particular task, and that's basically the use of memory. So if you've got to read data, we in computer forensics, we read a lot of data structures and we skip around from one structure to another in a file, and that's actually quite a heavy overhead, because if you think about it, your evidence in EnCase comes effectively most of the time from your evidence files, and there are a lot of layers for you to get to the data, because you have the evidence file. The evidence file might be segmented, it might be compressed, it might be encrypted. Then on top of that, you've got the disk partitions, then you've got the volume structures, and then you might then have encryption at a volume level, or compression at a volume level. Then you come up to the file level, so you might have encryption or compression at the file level. So it's amazing how fast your code will go if you read it into a buffer in memory first. There's a thing in EnScript called memory file class, and I remember when I first did this, and the script in question just went something like 20 times faster just straight away. There's also, just to finish off with, there's also a really neat option in the EnScript editor tab where you can actually debug using the profiler. So effectively you run your code, and then when it finishes, you view the profiler, and it effectively times how long everything took in your script. So it's a real good way of identifying bottlenecks. But yeah, I think if you've got something that's going slow and you're skipping around, if you're accessing a file through random access, then you're much better reading it into RAM, or even actually, believe it or not, you might even be better off copying it out onto disk first and processing it from there, because you've got so many layers within EnCase. So I hope that helps.
Great, thank you, Simon. I don't see any other questions in the chat window, so I think that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you to all the attendees for joining us.
Actually,
and I really hope that this was...
Sorry to interrupt. There's
Okay.
a few questions in the question and answer box. Some of them I've already answered. However, there are still some there in the question and answers.
Okay.
I can go through them if you like, since I can see them.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
So some of them I already answered. However, there is one question which came up, which is I'll answer this in person. Any plans to integrate Python and EnCase either to substitute or complement EnScript? Yes, we do actually have that on the roadmap, and we are looking actively how to complement EnScript along with Python. But that's not something which is coming in the next release. I think that, however, we're exploring as to how we can do that, including importing data as well as exporting out, just like EnScripts do today. Okay. Next question which we have is currently using SQLite plugin with DB browser. Is there a way to view DB databases internally in EnCase so that I could bookmark findings? It would make reporting easier. I'll let you handle this one, Simon, if possible.
Yeah, there's no way of actually like treating a SQLite database as a compound file. You can, however, we've got a few scripts. The generic SQLite database parser, for instance, enables you to effectively run queries, any number of queries over any number of databases. And so, if you've got a particular database with a particular name, you can fire off the script and it'll basically go and find any file with that name, and it will try and run the query, and then it will bookmark the data for you. But no, there isn't anything internally at the moment. Maybe if we talk to Harp nicely, he might put a feature request in for that for us.
I'd love to know more, and definitely we can look at that. Next question that you have is, what is the average time it takes to get familiar and comfortable with writing EnScripts?
Wow, that's a $64 million question, really. I mean, it depends on what your entry level is. I mean, if you've got no programming experience, to be fair, it is hard going. But you've got to just bear in mind that if you stick at it, you'll be amazed at how quickly you pick stuff up. By far and away, the best way is, as I've said, is to start off with a task and start off with some code that you already have, and that's how I started. Like I say, I'm not a trained programmer. I haven't done any form of programming qualification. I started out looking at other people's scripts and changing them and just tweaking them here and there. And like I say, if you can just sit on that part of your brain that wants to know everything straight away, your brain. If you go read that book, I mentioned the chimp paradox, your brain at a most fundamental level just likes black and white. It doesn't like grey areas, so it wants to know everything. I noticed somebody else had asked a question about, is there a book for EnScript? And there isn't, I'm afraid, at the moment, albeit I mean, it's something I've considered, putting together, but no, at the moment there isn't a book. But I'm not sure that books are great, I think, for reference, but you are much better off if you can start off with our practical, example, something you need to achieve, and then start with that a bit at a time. And like I say, I'm quite happy. Like if you've got something you need to do, and you say, Simon, look, I'm starting off, just give me a hint, then I'm quite happy to do that, and I can point you in the right direction and give you some sample code. That is by far and away the best way to start learning. But like I said, I can't be, I hate people looking at my code. I absolutely hate it. And sometimes, Dev will want my code, and I hate it because I don't actually consider myself to be a particularly good programmer. Some of our guys just absolutely gobsmack me when I see what they can do. So, I've been at it from a point of view with EnScript, probably, since I worked in the police, going back to the early 2000s. And I still don't consider myself, a particularly good programmer. You know, I'm always learning, and I look back at some of my old code and think, oh my God, what was I thinking about? Why did I do it that way? So, you know, the best thing, you know, like I say, if you could just get a start, and what'll happen is you once you get a little win, it gives you such a fantastic level of achievement, and then it's like it's a snowball, and it gets faster, and you'll be amazed at just how, you know, how better you get. And there's just such a lot of potential. There is just so much you can do. I mean, in general, but in EnCase, as I mentioned in the, you know, in the presentation, if you're not making best use of EnScript, you're really not getting your value for your dollar out of EnCase, because it's like it's manna from heaven. So I hope that helps.
Yes. Thank you so much, Simon, for the explanation. Now, we'll handle one more last question. I think this is valuable, and then the rest we'll handle by email. We have a question where, are there any bulletin boards where we could post some good finds or ask questions about functions or issues for EnScripts? Absolutely, there is. I actually posted a link in the question and answer link where you can directly go to that site. It's at forums.opentext.com, and then we have the security and all the products are listed there. Feel free to post questions there. It's mostly community driven. However, once in a while, one of us will pop in and try to answer questions, including Simon and me and other folks. So please use that actively. We really look forward to that, as well as send us your feedback. That's all I have. And back to you, Sonali. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Harp and Simon. So that concludes our webinar for today. Thank you all for attending and, you know, providing us such good questions. And I hope that you have a great rest of the day. Thank you. And please feel free to contact us on our website or via email, and we'll be happy to answer any more questions you have. Thank you.